Little people, big world star Amy Roloff and Chris Marek officially divorced, and finally Chris Marek was arrested. I will explain everything. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. We're talking about Amy Roloff and Chris Mick, their whirlwind romance, the cracks that turned into chasms, the finality of their divorce just weeks ago, and the bombshell that dropped like a sledgehammer, Chris Marek's arrest. We've spent months piecing this together, talking to sources close to both parties, reviewing court documents you haven't seen, and uncovering the painful truth behind the Instagram smiles. This is exclusive. Go back to 2017. Through decades of marriage and the heavy public attention following her divorce from Matt, Amy Roloff was adjusting to life as a newly single woman. Chris Marek came in, not a little person, not a reality star, but a prosperous real estate broker from Washington state who seemed grounded. Chris, who was introduced by mutual friends, stood for stability, normalcy, and Amy's opportunity to leave the shadow of the farm. He was loved by his fans. He was the kind, encouraging companion Amy had been waiting for. He hugged her family, seemed at ease on the sidelines of the LPBW cameras, and exuded sincere love. They all exhaled in relief when they got engaged in 2019. Amy had finally found her happily ever after. It appeared flawless. The August 2021 Riverside wedding was a romantic affair that was broadcast on television. Amy's rock will be Chris, he promised. Amy smiled and said that this chapter was meant to be. However, rumors started to circulate behind the carefully manicured Instagram pictures and the TLC adjustments. According to sources, it wasn't an easy adjustment from dating bliss to wedded life, particularly when viewed through the lens of LPBW. A quiet man thrown into a highly public life was Chris Marek. According to people close to the pair, Chris became more and more uneasy with the incessant filming requirements. Every argument on reality TV is a potential piece of film, so the pressure cooker began to wear thin. Chris undoubtedly adored Amy. However, he detested the circus. The sense that his life wasn't his own was something he despised. Suddenly, he was Amy Roloff's spouse. After having quietly developed a prosperous profession, it was chafed. He began avoiding the camera whenever he could, which infuriated the producers and, to be honest, Amy occasionally. Then the property disputes arose. Amy's condo in Portland served as her principal dwelling. Chris kept up his residence in Washington. According to insiders, this physical divide became symbolic, even if it was initially portrayed as functional. With her family, grandchildren, and the Roloff farm's business heritage, Amy had a strong connection to Oregon. Chris had strong commercial and personal links to the north. Conflict arose from compromise. There was always the "where do we live" debate. Amy had no plans to leave Oregon. Chris had no desire to move completely. Time felt shattered when they attempted to split it. As Amy concentrated on her memoir and other endeavors, she desired a genuine companion to share her everyday life in Portland. Chris appeared to be cut off from that world. Although the signs were subtle, they were there if you looked. Chris stopped showing up on Amy's social media accounts. Public appearances together became less frequent. Amy's postings became much more focused on her work, solo trips, children, and grandchildren. The story of the ideal couple was coming apart. The shocking official announcement that confirmed Amy and Chris had split up months earlier was made in May 2023. Fans were taken aback. Without the warmth that marked their early friendship, the news was sent through Amy's website. A tough decision and a plea for privacy were mentioned. After a particularly rough holiday season full of discussions about future plans and Chris's mounting disdain towards the public element of their lives, our sources indicate that the couple separated in late 2022. Although the public saw the breakup as friendly, Amy apparently suffered greatly from it. Amy was devastated. She genuinely thought that this was her forever. The speed at which things went south after the wedding caught her off guard. Many people cried and asked many questions. In private, it was terrible, but in public, she put on a strong front. Chris appeared determined, perhaps even somewhat relieved to avoid the limelight. The Oregon-filed divorce proceedings were extremely secret. No tumultuous public disputes over property were reported in TMZ. According to legal sources, both parties sought a speedy, uncontested dissolution and hired knowledgeable attorneys. Amy retained her business interests and her condo in Portland. Chris kept his assets and houses in Washington. Clear division indicated that both parties wanted to end the relationship swiftly and amicably. A very prominent marriage came to a quiet legal end when the final decree was signed in late June 2024. A lot of supporters thought Amy would recover swiftly. She prioritized her book promotion, her boutique, and her family. Chris was virtually forgotten by the public. Felt like the peaceful, melancholy end to their tale. However, the actual shockwave was about to occur. Then the silence broke on the morning of July 15, 2024. Official documents later verified the news that Christopher Merrick had been arrested in Clark County, which had first come from law enforcement sources. Social media was inundated with shock, rage, and unwavering support for Amy from fans. Stand with Amy became a trending hashtag. There was a lot of speculation. Did Amy have a darker side? Was she fortunate to be absent? How was she handling things? Amy Roloff remained steadfastly quiet. No remarks in public. No enigmatic quotes on Instagram. All comments were denied by her representatives. This silence spoke volumes. According to people close to Amy, the news horrified and deeply shook her. The accusations presented an image that was glaringly different from the man she married, even though they had been divorced for weeks. Remaining anguish and betrayal were said to coexist with a deep sense of relief that she was no longer in that relationship. First and foremost, she was heartbroken for the victim. Anger was present too, indignation at the decisions he made, indignation that this occurred. There was, however, a great deal of melancholy. It was heartbreaking that the man she once loved was reportedly capable of doing this. Seemed like the last unsightly shattering of the fairy story she had once believed in. Charges against Chris Myrick were not minor. They weren't about moving infractions or petty fees, but allegations of assault, domestic abuse, and malicious mischief. The words were terrifying. Based on the extensively redacted police report, obtained just after 1:30 a.m., deputies received a 911 call from a location listed as Chris Myrick's primary address. A female acquaintance who was visiting reported a physical altercation. According to the preliminary assessment, there was a serious escalation in the argument. The woman alleged that Murray grew violent, pushing her and knocking her against furniture, which caused minor bruises. After that, he allegedly began smashing furniture and throwing things around the house. Despite being clearly shaken, the woman refused immediate medical treatment. Myrick was reported to be aggressive and visibly intoxicated when deputies arrived. The victim was upset and the house was in chaos. Despite initial lack of cooperation, Myrick was apprehended without further problems. He was processed and put into Clark County Jail. His mugshot, with disheveled hair and haunted eyes, was taken. Later that day, pending his initial court appearance, he was released on bond. It is important to emphasize that these remain accusations. Until found guilty in a court of law, Chris Myrick is entitled to due process and the presumption of innocence. Nonetheless, the charges are extremely serious and upsetting, especially the section regarding domestic abuse. This was not a fight at a pub. This was someone he knew in his own home. The impact was instantaneous and powerful. As the story broke, Amy's world was thrown into turmoil. Social media stood firmly with her, but inside she wrestled with heartbreak, disbelief, and the painful reality that the man she had once trusted was at the center of such allegations. Friends, if you thought Amy Roloff's heartbreak ended with the divorce and the shocking headlines of Chris Myrick's arrest, you were wrong. Because what unfolded next was darker, more chaotic, and more devastating than anyone could have imagined. The night of violence. According to the redacted police report, it all began with a 911 call. A female acquaintance, terrified and shaken, reported that Chris had grown violent after an argument spiraled out of control. Deputies rushed to the house after midnight, and what they walked into was chaos. furniture overturned, broken glass scattered across the floor, screams, drunken slurs, the smell of alcohol filling the air. Chris Murick, once introduced to the world as Amy Roloff's steady rock, was in the middle of a violent outburst. The woman told deputies he had pushed her, slammed her against furniture, leaving bruises. And when she tried to pull away, he began smashing and throwing objects around the house. Imagine the horror. A place that was once supposed to be Amy's safe second home, now reduced to a crime scene. The arrest and the mugshot. When deputies finally subdued him, Chris resisted at first, but he was eventually taken into custody. He was aggressive, intoxicated, but handcuffed and led out into the flashing lights of police vehicles. The station, his mugshot was taken. The image that spread like wildfire across social media. Disheveled hair, tired, bloodshot eyes, a hollow expression that screamed of a man broken. For Amy's supporters, that single photo became a symbol. A symbol of betrayal. A symbol of the nightmare Amy had escaped just in time. Courtroom and due process. Later that day, Chris was released on bond, pending his court appearance. His lawyers reminded the world, "These are allegations. He is innocent until proven guilty." And legally, they were right. Chris Murick deserved due process. But the charges weren't minor. Assault, domestic abuse, malicious mischief. Words that echoed in headlines, whispered in gossip columns, screamed in fan forums. For fans, this wasn't just a legal case, it was the complete collapse of a man who once promised Amy forever. Social media reaction. As the news broke, social media erupted. Stand with Amy became a trending hashtag. Fans flooded Amy's accounts with messages of support, love, and encouragement. But along with support came speculation. People asked, where was Amy that night? Did she know about Chris's temper before? How much did TLC hide from the cameras? And yet Amy herself stayed quiet. No Instagram posts. No live streams. No public statements. Absolute silence. And that silence was powerful. 'Cause sometimes silence says more than words ever could. Amy's private pain. Insiders close to Amy revealed that she was heartbroken. Not just for herself, but for the victim involved. She felt anger, yes. Betrayal, yes. But also shame. Shame that her fairy tale love story had turned into a tabloid nightmare. And yet, within that shame, there was also a strange sense of relief. Relief that the marriage had already ended. Relief that she no longer had to share her future with a man capable of such darkness. Amy leaned heavily on her family, her children, her grandchildren. She buried herself in her boutique, her cooking, her church community. She told a close friend, "I won't let this define me. I can't." The Roloff family reacts. Inside the Roloff family, emotions ran high. Zach and Tori were furious. Protective of Amy, they wanted nothing more than to shield her from the headlines. Molly, private as ever, quietly offered her support. Jacob, the youngest, reportedly told friends that he was done with Chris from day one. And then there was Matt Roloff, Amy's ex-husband. Despite their long and complicated history, Matt reached out privately to check in on Amy, to ask if she was okay, to remind her that no matter what, she was still the mother of his children. For Amy, that meant something. It was a gesture of respect, a reminder that family stands tall in times of crisis. TLC's dilemma. Behind the scenes, TLC executives scrambled. This was the kind of scandal that could make or break a season. Do they film it? Do they expose it? Or do they protect Amy's privacy? Amy reportedly made her stance clear. "My pain is not your storyline." And to their credit, the producers agreed. The show would not turn her trauma into entertainment. But fans still wanted answers. And those answers came not from TLC but from social media, leaked court documents, and news reports. Chris's fall from grace. For Chris, life after the arrest was brutal. His real estate business collapsed. Clients pulled away. his license came under review. Friends distanced themselves. He became a pariah overnight. The man who once smiled on TV beside Amy was now ducking cameras outside courthouses, drowning in legal fees, and facing the very real possibility of jail. And Amy? She was free. Free from the marriage. Free from the chaos. Free to build her life again. Amy's healing journey. By the end of 2024, Amy began to speak, carefully, cautiously, but honestly. In a short live stream, she thanked her fans. Life doesn't always go the way we plan, but I'm still here. I'm still grateful. And I'm not giving up on love, on family, or on myself. That message touched hearts around the world. Fans filled her comments with love. They saw her not as a victim, but as a survivor. Amy poured her energy into her boutique, her baking business, and her grandchildren. She baked cookies with Jackson, played with Lila, and found joy in the smallest of moments. She leaned into her faith, choosing grace over bitterness. And in doing so, Amy showed the world the true meaning of resilience. Beyond the headlines. So what does this story really tell us? It's not just about Amy Roloff. It's not just about Chris Murick's downfall. It's about the strength of the human spirit. About how someone can walk through fire, be burned, scarred, humiliated, and still come out standing. Amy Roloff is proof that you can survive betrayal, heartbreak, and scandal, and still find a way to smile again. So viewers, let this story be a reminder. No matter how perfect a fairy tale may look, it can shatter. No matter how broken a heart may feel, it can heal. Amy Roloff may have lost her happily ever after with Chris Murick, but what she found was far greater. She found herself. And sometimes that's the most powerful love story of all. Viewers, welcome back. In the last episode, we explored Amy Roloff's heartbreak, Chris Murick's shocking arrest, and the world's stunned reaction. But friends, the story didn't stop there. In fact, what followed was an even more complicated journey, one filled with courtroom battles, whispers of betrayal, and the incredible resilience of a woman who refused to be broken. Court case intensifies. The first hearing after Chris's arrest set the stage for what would become a long, drawn-out legal drama. Prosecutors outlined the charges: domestic abuse, malicious mischief, and assault.